Hello, we are going to be back this week with more VOD reviews from Clutch Gaming's performance in the LCS for Spring Split 2019. This is going to be Saturday's game, which I haven't watched yet. Maybe in the future we'll think about format changes, but for now, we're going to be doing the VOD review how I like to do it. I like to be a fresh game that I haven't seen. That way, there's a bunch of information that that I can break down. And it feels a lot nicer that way. It feels like I could learn something myself from myself. So we're gonna go ahead and get right into draft, and then maybe towards the end of the video, we can talk about what we might be able to do moving forward. So let me go ahead and full screen this for you. And I guess maybe the yellow will work here. Probably not. Okay, so first pick Akali comes after Aatrox ban, Cassiopeia ban, Lucian ban, Urgot ban, Lissandra ban, and Camille ban. So Camille, still a threat in the jungle, so that's pretty clear that Clutch Gaming is afraid of anything that's going to give a lot of early game pressure in the jungle. So they go ahead and they take that out first, and it's not the most popular ban, so they go ahead and they ban it first as well. They make it their first ban rather than a different one. Optic Gaming opts for the Cassiopeia, which is a great blue side pick, specifically in this meta, just because it's triple flex. Or well, not to support to mid, bot, and top. Just can't speak. Lissandra gets taken out. Lissandra is going to be just still one of the best mid-game tempo mages, even though she's mid-range ever since the change to her passive. You have Aatrox, who is still going to be a threat. I believe this is still, or no, this is in 9.2 now. Last week we were in 9.1, so this is after the Aatrox nerfs. He's still usable, he's still pretty good. It's just a small damage change. There's nothing really significant about it. Same thing with Urgot. Urgot gets banned as well. Urgot, the reduced or the lengthened cooldown on his W, what that really does is makes it so that usually he can't get two rotations of his W during like one wave clear. Like say a cannon wave comes up, and you have to contest the cannon wave with Urgot. And whether or not you're a champion who likes to fight with Urgot or not, which there aren't many champions that can do that, he is only going to be able to get one rotation of his W, meaning his shield and the majority of his DPS, rather than possibly two, because it went from 13 up to 17. Pretty big change. So you might be able the next wave before Urgot is actually able to do any kind of lane control of that nature, which is pretty important. And then Lucian is just coming out as one of the best tempo ADCs. Like controlling the game, getting a lead is really easy. He's mobile, helps control the game. He's good for laning, good for getting turret plating. Just very good overall in the current meta, who supports fighters and does not support a lot of tanks, since like Lucian's issue is really just murdering huge gigantic tanks. He doesn't provide enough raw damage to do that. But nothing particular about any of these bans. These are all pretty common. So as someone pointed out in a previous video that I did not point out, having Lissandra and Urgot out does make the Akali pick ever so much better. So that is something that's really nice for Clutch Gaming here. That they can put priority on the Akali. The Akali can go into the top lane to be sort of a farm lane, or it can go into the mid lane and be sort of the earlier assassin that you might want it to be. But overall, there's probably not a very good response to Akali that isn't just a farm lane that's going to try and stop her from farming so much. But there aren't a lot of good options for that. So let's just see how Optic Gaming responds. They go ahead and they go with Thresh and Rumble. Now, Rumble's really interesting here because Rumble isn't bad into Akali. It isn't the first thing I'd pick because Akali can definitely give a lot of lane pressure post 6, and is not very afraid of the Rumble ult since she can just ult off of it or even E off of it. So definitely post 6, Rumble is not going to be having lane control there. But before 6, Rumble can bully that a lot, so it is an option that they could put in if they wanted to. And because he's sort of a bruiser, he can build a little bit defensively and it won't matter. Once he gets double penetration, he'll have enough damage to still be a mid-game threat. Thresh overall support is just decent in any composition. There's not a whole lot to look here. This is probably something that's specifically requested from Gate. So, Clutch Gaming responds with Ezreal Kench. I don't know how to look at this because I think that I would not be the one choosing Ezreal Kench. I don't have anything against Ezreal Kench as a lane. I think it's a really good lane combo. But picking Ezreal blind basically says, hey, you're allowed to pick Kai'Sa for free, and I've talked about that in a previous video, so I'm not going to go into a deep explanation. If you want to go watch, I don't remember if it was Clutch versus Equifax or Clutch versus TSM, but there was an Ezreal versus Kai'Sa matchup. And I talk about the dynamic of that and how it favors Kai'Sa. At least it favors the win condition of Kai'Sa, even with the new Ezreal build, which is quite obnoxious. Tahm Kench doesn't support this either. Like if this was a different support who could pair really aggressively with Ezreal, it would be a different story. But this says that Clutch Gaming is not going to play towards bottom side at all. And you know what? We're actually seeing that kind of pattern. Like you see Huni. Everyone knows Huni's a great top laner. You see Demonte. Demonte's put on some pretty impressive performances. But it seems like Clutch Gaming just does not want to rely at all on Piglet or Vulcan. They just want to put them on something that they're going to be useful, and they don't want to play around bot ever. Whether or not I agree with that doesn't really matter. As I'm not in the house. I don't know them as players. I don't know how they perform in scrims. But that's very clear that regardless of if this is a pattern that I can see over 2 weeks, it's probably a pattern that will continue, and it might be a pattern that's abusable. And even if this is going to be the pattern, I think there are other picks that can fit these roles, and because there are other picks that can fit the role of a lane that does not need jungle pressure, or really any help at all. So it's just not necessary. Then I don't know. Yeah, I think you're either picking it early because you want to hold your other picks as late as possible. But I don't think that both of these get banned. Like if they go ahead and they pick Kai'Sa, they might ban other ADCs, but there's no reason to pick Ezreal blind. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Let's go to the second ban phase, and we'll see how the draft develops. Because I've already pointed out Kai'Sa's here. Kai'Sa's clearly a response to Ezreal. Both bot lanes have already been chosen. Both bot lanes farm. That's it. Syndra ban comes out. Syndra is, well, I mean, Syndra's, I could say a lot about Syndra. Syndra's a stat checker. She's really good to kill one specific person. That's probably her specialty. But she's also a very good mid-game tempo mage who has quite a bit of range with a stun, and the stun is longer than most other stuns. I believe it's 1.5 seconds. So Syndra a very strong pick, especially if you wanna pick a comp that's particularly squishy, because if Syndra can start rolling because she can ult anyone, then it's gonna make the game just ever so harder. And then they go ahead and they ban Zoe as well. Also probably just a a throw at Damonte. We do not want them to have a champion that can, from long range, immediately kill someone on our team. We go ahead and we take out LeBlanc and Yorick. LeBlanc I find a really interesting ban. I think LeBlanc opens up the possibilities that you could put in mid lane. Like if you were thinking that you might not put Akali mid, then what LeBlanc does is it says there are a lot more weaker mids that I could play now that LeBlanc is not on the table. I honestly have no idea what weaker mids they could want to play. And by weaker, I mean weaker laning phase. That's really tough. Like even something like Orianna, like they might want to play. Or they might want to have in their pocket just in case they feel as if it's necessary. But anyway, Optic Gaming goes ahead and they pick Lee Sin, which I find particularly interesting because it says, okay, well, we have all our late game pressure already. We need something that's going to control the early and possibly snowball anyone who is considered a bully. So we have a bully, we have late game pressure, we have pick, we need help for the bully, and we need help for snowballing. So pretty simple and straightforward. There are other picks that could do the same thing as Lee Sin, but Lee Sin is particularly good now in this meta, just because when fighters are good, Lee Sin is always going to be good. Clutch Gaming go ahead and they respond with Elise and Jace. So Jace and Jace and Akali are going to be able to double flex if necessary. So they're able to look at the picks that Optic is going to take here in a second, since Optic has last pick for their well, it's mid or top. They're not particularly sure where they want to send who at the moment. Usually Rumble gets defaulted to top, but he's been played mid in several metas, depending on the matchup. And then the Elise pick is really interesting. I think it's a response to the Lee Sin pick, more particularly. Elise has a lot of early game damage. She has really good dive potential. The only problem is Elise, if Elise doesn't get gold, it might even be less useful, or at least not less useful, less reliable than Lee Sin. And that reliability factor could possibly cause trouble later. Because when I look at this team now I see a full red team. I see that we have a split pusher. We have a possible split pusher. So I mean, you could 1-3-1 if you really wanted to. And then if you did 1-3-1, you have no wave clear. I can't spell. I don't know why. I don't know why we wouldn't have any wave clear in the 1-3-1. Not that like the enemy team has like huge siege potential, but we don't exactly have huge split push potential either. The Jace is going to be a threat in the side lane. Like he's going to be pushing really hard tempo. It doesn't really matter who's in the lane with him. And then Akali won't be doing that. Akali can get pushed out. She isn't necessarily going to have a lot of turret pressure, especially if someone's out there in the 1-3-1 with her. And Optic set up to match 1-3-1. So I think this is a drafting error. Drafting something that would default to a 1-4, I think is perfectly fine. And if they want to play this 1-4, it's perfectly fine. But I don't think Jace is the thing here, because you can like do 1-3 and play one side. Like if I were to draw a map here, if you're gonna play one side and you play 1-3 and you hover jungle and it's gonna be an aggressive jungle and you play convergence, so you're gonna converge into the enemy jungle here, and you completely dominate vision control, and that's your kind of idea. You're just looking for scrappy fights that you can force while the enemy doesn't have vision. because you know that they have to take control of that area for some reason. Maybe you're doing it like way before a dragon spawns. You could do that, but that's hard. That's hard with this team comp. I think that you definitely want wave clear so you can have like push, at least with the 4. Or if you are going to 1-3-1, you gotta have push. And I don't think Jace is the pick for that. So other picks that could fill that gap, 2 of them are banned. Syndra and Lissandra would be 2 picks that could fill that gap. Another pick that could fill that gap, that's a tough one. Xerath, maybe? Ziggs? Ziggs might be safer. And like Ziggs isn't actually bad here because it gives you a lot of wave clear and siege, and it would make this 1-3-1 way scarier. Like, or 1-4, way scarier. I'm sorry, I said 1-3-1. Because you'd be doing this and Ziggs, imagine. This would be in a side lane, and this would be in between the 2 lanes. She can go fetch to play for Akali, or she can go to play for these guys. And like Tahm Kench with a Ziggs and an Ezreal, that's pretty hard to beat. One other option that was a little bit less contested would be Corki. I'm not the biggest fan of Corki, but I think he is pretty strong in terms of wave clear and mid game siege, and even just in general a siege comp. Corki is going to scale really hard. And it won't destroy the scaling of this team to pick something like that. Whereas picking Jace along with Elise, along with Ezreal, signifies that you're going to win this game probably pre-30 minutes. And if you don't win pre-30, I don't think that there's a big chance of winning. Now, if you do win pre-30, sure, that's great, but you also have to deal with the Lee Sin. And you have to somehow deal with the fact that one of your lanes is just not going to do anything. So you have to win 3 pre-30 with one of your lanes being completely passive for like the first 10 minutes of the game. Okay, well that's doable. Let's look at Optic Gaming. They go ahead and they last pick Sion. Now I'm assuming that they're going to put Sion against the Jace. I was saying earlier, like you can put Rumble against Akali, but remember I labeled very specifically what you might want to do that for, and how it might be better. It is actually better in the mid lane just because Rumble can push and back off really quickly. Mid lane's shorter, and now if Rumble's in the mid lane, if he roams, he can actually provide a lot more pressure than Akali just because his ultimate is extremely strong. Although you probably won't see Rumble roaming bot. He will probably be roaming top. Then again, you know that Clutch are probably going to play on the top side of the map anyway. So it's really going to come down to this 3v3. That's going to be your most of the action for your game is going to be from that side of the map. And then this side of the map is going to be pretty boring. These guys are going to power spike around 20 minutes, like 18 to 20 minutes. And these guys are going to power spike around 28 minutes plus, maybe 27. Like 27 is like good par. Because you're going to get 3 items on Kai'Sa, and then it's going to be, oh, now she's just as useful as Ezreal, and later she will be more useful as Ezreal, or than Ezreal. Alright, but okay, let's go ahead and get in the game. No reason to stress too much about draft here. Although I think that the game is easier from the red side. Okay, 5 point from both teams, pretty conservative. Neither team has like the most amazing like level 1, but you definitely don't want to feed it Kleptomancy Level 1 just in terms of like RNG and luck. You know, could get like 3 bags of gold. Happens. He just got a health pot on the first Q. That's pretty that'll affect the lane. Since he remember he does push, he does put a little bit of pressure onto the Kaisa, but not enough to stop her from really farming or scaling. But these guys, their level 1 is pretty strong. Even Scion. Very smart by Dardoch to take W second if he was going to go for an early scuttle. I think that he was pulling a gambit there because you can never really tell where Elise is going to path since she has so many options, and because she's AP, she does take the golems really fast. So it is more beneficial for her to go take an early golems so she can get them again than it is for her to go ahead and take the race, the raptors, which will actually do a lot of her HP. She goes for top side here. She almost got a second golem. She might be able to rob him here. And that would actually be really strong for the side of Lyra. Interesting. Alright, well, a lot just happened, so let's take this slowly. Okay, first of all, this is even in terms of level. It's not even in terms of buffs. So Lyra is being a little bit aggressive here. He doesn't have blue buff yet, so he knows that he's on limited resources. But remember that all the burst damage that Elise has is actually really beneficial at this very specific state of the game. She's really great super early. She's good for early executions and early skirmishing. And her skirmishing is particularly good. The Jace pick is also going to provide a lot of damage for the level 3 to 5. So it's either Dardoch is going to either trying to fight just to get his golems, because this is going to be the majority of his XP and gold. For his first clear. My understanding it's 200 gold. I'm not gonna lay I don't know the XP off the top of my head. But it's probably gonna get him to level 4 at the end of it, just barely. Which could definitely swing the course of the early game, since if Elise is pathing in his jungle, he definitely wants to get ahead. Like, Elise is going to be putting early pressure. He could put early pressure, but he's probably not going to be successful if Elise is there also, because Elise is going to out-damage him and be able to outmaneuver him in most skirmishes. So it's really just important that he farms just for a couple levels, so that he can get the resources that he needs to be able to fight. So he pulls Dokla back and he says, I really want these golems, but we have to be really careful about it. Where they end up losing the flash of Dokla, and that's in exchange for the flash of Elise and Huni. Elise and Jace. So that's actually beneficial for the side of Optic. Let's see. I just want to see if that could have gone better. I might need to slow it down just so that I can see this better. So Jason engages onto Dokla, pushes Dokla back. Elise goes ahead and dodges the Scion Q. Elise actually flashes in really aggressively. This was unnecessary. Once they got the Scion flash, they had already won the skirmish. Let me see again where Huni flashed. Okay, so Huni also flashed the Scion Q, so that was really important, because if he actually took that damage, it's possible that Lee Sin would finish this Q and he would be able to kill Huni. And trading 1 for 1 is probably not what Clutch want to do. They probably want to trade 1 for 0. Just because, you know, if they're going to keep going even trades, eventually it's going to benefit Optic more than it's going to benefit them. You know. So I don't know. I just can't justify Lyra's flash. It's a lot of greed. Oh, that is not what I wanted to do. If Lyra doesn't flash here, both tops don't have flash, and the jungle matchup stays even in terms of resources, and Elise can continue to put pressure. And Elise being able to continue to put pressure onto Lee Sin without having to worry about not having flash and being rotated on is a is a very important factor in how this early game can go for clutch. And at least having that flash anyway just improves her maneuverability and being able to dive later on. Like, because if Lyra keeps flash and forfeits these golems, Dardoch's probably going to stay here anyway, since Huni is going to just go ahead and farm this and recall and probably teleport. Dokla's probably going to teleport. Dardoch's going to collect a couple minions. Lyra goes back to blue. And all of this can just repeat again, just with different resources on the table, if they thought necessary, like if they wanted to be that aggressive. Now, on what's happening mid lane, this is what I was talking about. Rumble's a lane bully. He has a lot of AoE damage, and the ignite definitely helps his early game pressure. It's pretty interesting because if this was preseason, that ignite would kill Damonte. But other than that, Dark Harvest XD. This dynamic will change later, but it probably won't change until Akali gets Hextech Gunblade. Now that Crown has Flash and Damonte doesn't, Damonte's going to get behind on farm. Because if you watch really closely here, not there. So, Damonte flashes. Crown actually doesn't have any abilities to follow that up. So he didn't flash himself specifically because the kill is actually unnecessary, and he didn't need to greed for the kill anyway, because if he flashes there and gets the kill, sure, he gets the gold, but now having the flash, Damonte will play knowing that he doesn't have flash, and Damonte will actually end up losing a lot of CS. So he's going to get the same effect. So, from what I understand, Optic is looking to go ahead and try and stop Lyra from being able to put any pressure on the map, while also just playing really calmly because they know that they can. They can scale. Hold on. I didn't think anything was going to happen here, to be honest. I thought Dardoch would just leave. Lyra goes ahead and catches out Dardoch. Lyra actually gets the scuttle, or no, Dardoch gets the scuttle, so that's good for him. Dardoch turns onto Lyra. So think about this. Why is Lyra entering here if they have no lane priority? Like if you, this is a really basic mistake. There's not a whole lot to see here. There is no reason for Lyra to move forward more than to possibly try and steal the scuttle. He steals the scuttle, he walks away. They don't have that many resources to try and get back on top of him. So I don't know. I find this really awkward. They force Ezreal and Tom to like come out of the lane that they do have priority in. But Thresh already wasn't in that lane, and the CS that Optic lost, they make up for in a kill onto Dardoch, a swing in the tempo in terms of jungle. Like Dardoch's going to completely control the jungle now, and if they really wanted to, now that they have the tempo in jungle, they can probably force the dragon when they want to. It'll probably be the next time Rumble has ult, since that's the biggest zoning tool. And it's really important to see that here. this is a really large tool that you can place in many different ways. And when you're talking about the river, if you just place it here, you can stop people from entering. Same with here. If you want to stop people from entering a zone or some form of zone control, Rumble's ult will definitely help secure neutral objectives, along with the DPS that he has on his Q. So, very, very simple mistake made by Lyra, taken advantage of by Optic, just by a little bit of good communication. I just don't understand why this is happening. Look here. Let's figure out how we got here. Oh, this is... I miss some of this. I miss a lot of the build up to this play because of the replay that Riot did, and that kind of bothers me. But what happens here is that Tom is roaming. So if Tom is running, that also means that there is some kind of you could define it in binary, like as some kind of quantum idea. Okay, Thresh could be roaming, he could not be roaming. Like, you don't have to do it like this specific and this logically, but whether or not Thresh is roaming or not is unknown, and because it's unknown, you have to assume that it's going to be true. And this is just a basic rule of caution. You want to be prepared for something before it happens, if it's able to happen. So Damonte and Lyra move forward for Raptors. Jace goes ahead, and he has the push in mid lane, so he's going to move down for Raptors. But Thresh gets here a lot faster than Tahm Kench gets here, because Thresh actually came on a back, and Tahm Kench came from bot. So because Thresh gets here first, Lyra and Damonte get caught off guard. And I don't know, this is just a big issue. Like, I would assume that they probably knew that Thresh backed. But I can't assume anything because I can't see what happened, because the Riot replay won't show me what happened. Thresh went back into his lane. Not really sure. Yeah, I can't tell if Thresh, if it's like known that that Thresh backs or not, because CG should understand, like, as a basic rule, okay, well, Thresh is much closer to the Wraith camp than Tahm Kench is, so we should be aware that Tahm Kench is going to be either closer, or that before any of this happens, maybe even Jace will be closer. And on top of this, let's talk about the actual value of what's happening. So imagine that they wanted to do this. Imagine that they understood the risk. So this is my axiom. CG understood the risk of their decision. So assuming that they understood the risk, what is the value of the intended play? Talking about a Wraith camp. This is 130 gold. Maybe it's a little bit less, maybe it's a little bit more. I'm not gonna be quoted. It's close enough to 130 gold that I'm not gonna care. If it's 130 gold, there are several outcomes. But first of all, if it's 130 gold and you're not exactly sure if it's going to happen, like your desired outcome, so I'm gonna label that W star. Your desired outcome is ideally that you get Wraith camp or get Raptor camp. And because you don't know where Thresh is, Jace is nowhere nearby, and Tahm Kench is nowhere nearby. And if you are sure that Thresh did back first, there might be a 40% chance that Thresh is roaming. So maybe you get a 60% chance on the Raptors. So if I took the EMV of that, what I'm gonna get is 55. I'm gonna get like 68. 68 gold. That's the value of their decision if I assume that it's gonna go correctly. So what about the 40% that it goes badly? Well, if I talk about the benefit that's going to give the other team, well, it could definitely give the other team 450 gold. Or if Elise is worth a little bit less gold, then let's go ahead and say she's worth 400. And remember, this is including assist gold, so please do not get angry. This is including assist gold. 400 times 0.4. Well, that's pretty clear. This is only 180 gold. Or something of that nature. 175 or something. Well, if it's a possibility of negative 175 gold, if that's my EMV for W2 or W or dot W star, and my W star is 68, then my overall expected value of this play is negative. So they understand the risk. This decision is just completely irrational. And I could go into more specifics, but I don't know if anyone. I don't know how much time I should be using on something like that. When this is really such a small play. So, and I did that assuming that they left. They did not leave. They let 3 of them die for 1 kill, and I don't even know if they secured Wraith Camp. So now you give Optic the lead. Optic has the lead. Optic does not need to do anything. Optic can play perfectly safe and calm, and not feel pressured to do anything because they know that they're going to scale. The only thing they should feel pressured to do is to ward enough so that Elise and Akali are not able to pull anything sneaky. And frankly, until Akali gets Hextech Gunblade, it's probably not possible that she's able to do anything sneaky. I'm not sure if Sion spent the gold on his back yet for the triple kill, which is why his lane looks like that. But his lane is not going to look like that for very long. He is going to get really tanky, and Jace is going to be really useless. You're talking about 900 income. Jace is a 15 CS lead. Like that might be 200, maybe up to 300 gold. If Zion's more than 500 gold ahead, Huni's gonna have a big issue. Huni's gonna be really far behind in terms of items. However, Huni does have the turret plating. I'm not sure how much turret plating Sion has. Doesn't have any. So that will make up a little bit. If he does have 3 turret plating, they might be somewhat even. But you're still talking about a big advantage that Sion shouldn't have. If Sion didn't have any of that, Huni would actually end up being a really strong split pusher. But with all the pressure that Optic got because of all the bad decisions that Lyra has made already, they've gotten Rift Herald and they've gotten a Fire Dragon. So they've secured extra security for the late game and a faster late game. And then they've also gotten a way to accelerate the game in their favor without having to trade. So imagine this, you might want to trade turrets. Say you want to rotate a lot of people to bot, the enemy team rotates a lot of people to top, you trade bot turret for top turret, someone gets first turret and someone doesn't. That's pretty standard. Giving away an early Rift Herald means that Optic is going to be able to go ahead and get first turret without any real struggle. There is not going to be a trade. It is going to be they take a turret and then they rotate to make sure they don't lose a turret. It looks like they've already made their decision. They want it to be the top turret. Akali decides to teleport top. I don't know if this is particularly a good idea. She lives, but it's a waste of a teleport. That's a 6-minute cooldown. That was completely not necessary. Remember that trading thing? If she teleported bot, she might actually be able to trade for this. Optic spent a lot of resources on the top, and they didn't want to do anything to protect the bot. Let's see how that actually went out and played out. So Asta, Kaisa, went ahead and backed while Thresh actually went top. Asta's not able to move up to tower because she knows that there's going to be more than 2 people on the bottom side. Lyra does pick up a blue buff during this time period, which is nice for him. But Optic still get First Blood Tower, and they go ahead and they get tower plating from it. And because they were able to place the Rift Herald so early. Yeah, they placed the Rift Herald really early. They got all the tower plating on that turret, which is a lot of extra income. CG did not get any of that turret plating, so Optic got the turret plating and they got the bonus from the Rift Herald, taking the First Blood Tower. So this is a lot of tempo in the favor of Optic. So even though they lose bottom tower, they are able to still gain a pretty significant lead. And it's okay that they donated Thresh for that. I don't think Thresh was necessary for that play to be completely successful. But I think that them taking security in their decisions is perfectly fine. Like, imagine if Lyra was topside at that time, and Thresh was bot, and Akali teleports top, and then it ends up being a 3v2 in the top side, and they're not able to force the turret completely. That could possibly be a bad situation for Optic, in which they might take all the turret plating with the Rift Herald, but the turret lives with like 100 HP, and then they have to go back top, which I don't think would be a particularly big issue for them. But I also don't think that I don't think that they want to put themselves in a situation that's going to be dangerous for them later. So I'm not with their decision, but I'm not against it either. I think their option was a very good choice, albeit that there are other choices available to them. And having a lot of choices signifies that you have a lot of control in the game. So let's kind of stop for a second, and let's talk about Clutch Gaming's choices right now. So Akali is Hextech Gunblade. Jace has 1 item. Jace actually just got soloed by Sion, so you know Jace is actually not going to be relevant. And he didn't build for lethality, so he can't siege. So Jace can't do 1-4 with Akali in a side lane, and Jace like try to siege with Ezreal because he didn't build for siege. And Elise is somewhat down as well, and they don't have any pick potential. So what do? That's a tough question. Well, who's vulnerable? Lee Sin's pretty vulnerable. Could they possibly kill Lee Sin if they had Akali and they had Elise? Yes. Kai'Sa's pretty vulnerable. Could they possibly kill Kai'Sa if they had Lee Sin, or not Lee Sin, they had Elise and Akali? Yes. Could they maybe utilize the Tahm Kench ult to try and get some of these picks? Yes. But will any of these picks really change the game? No, they're going to have to do several of them. Because you're talking about a big amount of gold that they need to build back, because ideally at this point in the game, Clutch Gaming should be ahead. They want to be ahead. They have a mid-game, early game, and a mid-game champion versus a late game, and like it's a lane bully, but Rumble's ult is pretty strong late. Early game and a mid late. Like he's a face tank late, he's a mid game power champion. So let's see what Clutch Gaming do here, because this seems to be about what I was trying to say. They Tahm Kench ult onto the bottom side and they kill Rumble. Okay, Rumble was vulnerable specifically because he didn't have Flash. I think it was a little bit I think they were only secure. I think this was only secure because they knew Lee Sin was mid lane at the time. I believe he was spotted. Yes, he was spotted. He was spotted right here. And possibly before that, but I don't need to go back and check. They knew Sion was top. They knew Kai'Sa was mid. They probably also knew that it was possible that Thresh is nearby. But at this point, when you're this far behind, you end up having to take more risk. And now that's one of the ideas here where my opinion is going to change because of the state of the game. In the early game, I think during this entire game, Clutch is playing desperately. But I think it's only necessary now. There was no reason for this to be necessary in the early game, such that like Lear played so desperately. I mean, unless they're very aware that their team composition isn't gonna function, and maybe that makes them really anxious. But that's not how they need to play. They need to play on positive gains, advantages, and building more advantages little by little by little until they reach some key power spikes in which they can finally take control of the game. And once they have control of the game, then they're able to do something more. So they do get a little bit of a opening in the bottom side, but they're not going to be able to do a whole lot more. And they can't actually take any. There's no neutral objective, and they can't take a tower off that trade because Optic can clearly rotate, and Optic has more options in terms of wave clear. So CG has really got to be patient at this point, but they also have to understand that if they're not able to do something, it's not going to improve their situation. Let's look at this a little bit slower. Okay, so double teleport comes through from CG. One teleport comes through from Optic. Kai'Sa is actually really far from the fight, so this is a one advantage for CG. CG is currently about to enter a 5v4, which will turn into a 5v5, assuming that everybody was alive. So CG isn't able to take down Crown, but Crown lost his ultimate early in the fight and was not able to use it for any kind of zone control and the AoE that it's actually meant to be used for. He had to use it to try and save himself, and now he's pretty much out of the fight. Demonte's able to get in onto Crown, and then he moves on to Gate. He's trying to make every opening they can before Kai'Sa gets to the fight. So currently they are 4v3. Now CG continues to, they kill Gate, then they get into a 4v3 again because Kai'Sa is actually arriving at this time. And Optic decides to retreat. So this is perfectly fine. This is that kind of desperateness that is necessary for CG. They said, okay, well, what resources do we have? How can we spend them to make sure that the bad play that probably could have happened turns into a play that could probably go in our favor and give us any kind of control in the game? So how did we get to this spot? Well, Huni's out of place, honestly. If Huni wants to be here, usually you want to have a little bit of vision control on the bottom side. And ideally, if you're blue side, you probably want to have more control vision on the bottom side because there's a dragon coming up. And I understand that it's probably really hard to do that because you don't have mid tower and you don't have bottom tower. So very, very, very difficult situation CG is in. They want vision in this zone. They don't have any of it. Huni's pushing up so that they have any kind of lane control for this Fire Dragon, because Fire Dragon is going to be a really important part in this game because Optic already has one. They want to try and negate some of Optic's scaling so that they're able to stay in the game, stay relevant. So they're saying, okay, well, we're going to use all of our resources on this play. And it does give them a little bit of success. So they do get the Fire Dragon, they get 2 kills, one of them die. So very small, but very good. So Clutch are playing topside right now with Huni in the bottom side because Huni's the only teleport. So if Baron is an option that Optic decide to force, which is something that they probably will not force until they feel really comfortable in terms of items, and they could probably win a team fight anyway, or they could do it early. But they do have to do it before Jace decides that he's going to take down towers, or they need to go put someone against Jace. Optic doesn't have a good person to put against Jace, because then they're going to be stuck 4v5 at the Baron pit. Gate actually ends up getting caught out. The Baron does go to the side of Optic, but they're in shattered ruins at this point. Like, they're not ready for a fight like this, so it's good for Clutch to use the macro like this. I kind of read this wrong before the play happened, but it was mostly because I didn't see that Sion didn't have teleport. Kai'Sa has teleport, but if Kai'Sa splits, Kai'Sa could split and farm against the Jace. Jace would still get turret damage. Kai'Sa cannot hold Jace off the turret. And because Jace can't hold Kai'Sa off the turret, that causes a really big issue for the split push. It means that Jace is still going to have success. So in order for Jace not to have success, they decide to force Baron. But if they're going to force Baron, then this just needs to be planned out a little bit better. Because look at this. So Optic have wards here. They have the quad river pink. So this is a really strong formation for controlling river. But they don't have any kind of vision in terms of where people are coming from, which sides they're being collapsed on from, and how they're going to respond. So they have 3 in the Baron pit. Sion obviously has to be in the Baron pit. They have Gate standing forward. Gate's actually the lowest level on the team, is level 9. So this is also just this is like just a setup mistake. Having possibly your squishiest member, he's about as squishy as Kai'Sa, stand forward and be on watch. He should honestly be back here. You might want Rumble, or at least someone next to him for this to happen. So he gets 1 shot. I just don't really like how this plays out. This was way messier than it should have been. I'm not saying that Clutch didn't deserve this. I'm saying that it should have been a lot harder. And I think that was a mistake by Optic. But Optic also getting the Baron negates any kind of lead that Clutch could have gotten here. So imagine this. Clutch gets 2 kills. That's gonna be what, your 600 gold. It might be some kind of shutdown. It might be 600 to 900. Baron itself is 1500 gold, and it denies Baron from Clutch, which is pretty much their only way to win this game. having the Baron, being able to split. So Optic is basically trying to hold Clutch out of the game until they become useless. And if they're able to hold Clutch out of the game until they become useless, Clutch will just not be able to contest anything. The fights will very clearly go into the favor of Optic without Clutch even making errors. Okay, so that was at least good by Clutch. Good macro lane setup. Set up the 4-1 and say, okay, well, we're going to force you to do something we know that you're not able to do. We know that you're not able to do Baron with much comfort, and because it's not with a lot of comfort, we're going to make sure that you do it, or you're going to lose your bottom turret. And if you lose your bottom turret, then we're just going to keep on pushing to your inhibitor turret until you decide to do something that we know that you possibly can't do. Optic, however, was strong enough to do so. Now they're getting a free siege on the mid lane, which I don't think... I think that this was probably defendable, but Clutch is really, really dedicated to getting this Infernal. And because they're dedicated to get this Infernal, Optic takes Baron minions to mid, and they say, we're going to take your tier 2, and we're going to hold you out of mid. You cannot enter mid from this point. So Dokle goes ahead and he says, okay, well, I'm going to push you out of that point too, so that you can't flank us from the bottom side. So this is actually really good by Optic. They know that they have certain resources, and they know that because Clutch Gaming was so committed to the next Fire Dragon, because it's one of the only ways in which that they can in which they can have any kind of advantage in this game, then they're going to abuse that and say, you're going too early for the Fire Dragon, we're not going to let you have that vision anyway afterwards, because we're going to force you off and force you to push back in mid. So Clutch is trading mid for bot inner. I'm very reluctant to... Okay. So if anybody thinks that what's happening is weird, it's actually correct. Clutch needs all of the gold they can get to stay in this game. If they know that they're going to lose bottom turret and they know that Optic is going to go to Fire Dragon, then they need to take any kind of advantage that they're able to get. So they say, we're going to take 2 turrets, we're going to lose a turret, and we're going to lose Fire Dragon. However, what they didn't take into account was Akali had or not Akali, who teleported bot. Kai'Sa teleported bot and then pushed in their inhibitor. So what needed to happen here was Akali and Ezreal need to teleport into bot. And this is bad. Like this sucks. Like very, very bad situation for Clutch that they have to use those resources, because they're some of the only resources that they have available to them. And given the state of the game, it's not favorable for them to have any kind of disadvantage in terms of teleports. So then when they don't have a teleport on the map, it makes their life a lot harder. But there are not any neutral objectives on the map for a while. There's not a Baron for a while. So I don't think it's something that they should be particularly struggling about to use those teleports in order to not lose their inhibitor tower. Because taking these 2 towers, losing bot inner and losing dragon, and then saving bot inhibitor tower, all is correct. But not committing to saving this bottom inhibitor is not correct. They did not teleport for it. Now they lose the inhibitor, now the game gets harder. Losing an inhibitor makes the game extremely difficult. They ended up losing a second inhibitor tower on the back end of that because Optic goes ahead and they say, well, you backed really late, then you went to try and defend bot, which was unsuccessful. You should have just left bot and came mid, and then not let us push mid, and then you would still have mid turret. So now Clutch's base is open. So it only takes about a push or two for Optic to finish this game. So this tower top is free. It's 100% free because of the super minions that are coming in bot, and they have a teleport on Sion. And there's no one else that can kill super minions. Like Ezreal and Akali are like not very good at that. So they might send Akali just because Akali has teleport, so they might want to teleport Akali top, but she's not going to be particularly stopping a push from Sion. I guess I don't want to miss anything. CG decide to make a very desperate play. They say, well, we want to kill the split pusher. Optic say, you want to kill the split pusher, we're going to kill your mid inhibitor. And this was only really important because if you remove the split push Baron buff, it's really helpful, but I don't think this is helpful because the Baron buff was already going to go down. So really, like, and I'm not saying that they had any other options. I'm only saying that they should be waiting for Optic to make a mistake instead of trying to themselves force something that it probably isn't going to go very well for them. Like, they just need to juggle and make a mistake. Or juggle until Optic makes a mistake. They didn't even commit for that, even though they lost inhibitor. If they were going to lose inhibitor, they might as well commit it just to kill him. Like, someone might as well just finish that so that Sion would not have the next Baron buff that was going to happen. Or at least if he was dead, then maybe they could contest the next Baron, which would possibly stall until their inhibitors come back up. So here's probably last push. I wouldn't expect this game to go very much longer. So Optic say you have 2 open inhibitors, we're just trying to split you up so that we can dive. Very good flash by Asta. Demolish. This is looking not amazing for Optic, but like in terms of like they should be finishing here, but it's not very necessary for them to finish because no matter what happens, the later the game goes, the easier the game is for them. And because they have Baron buff, it also makes this a lot easier because they have the healing. Kaisa actually is teleporting back in so they can finish the game. Akali still doesn't have ultimate because it's been an extended fight for over 30 seconds now. CG tries to make their last stand. It's not very successful, but it's not going to be successful given the team comp. So what's my conclusion? And let's just be on a screen. What is my conclusion for this game? I really don't like the Clutch Gaming draft. I think that this draft relies really heavily on being ahead early, and it leaves you without options when you're not ahead. And because you're left without options, well, I mean the game is over. You're in a dominant, like the enemy has pure dominant strategies. Like they can they're very easily identifiable dominant strategies that the enemy is able to choose at any given point. They can opt into like Clutch actually did have like one good play, one good option for this entire game, and that was forcing Optic to Baron when they didn't want a Baron, and that was not even successful. So what I think about CG is I do not like the Elise pick. Actually, you know what? I would like the Elise pick if they changed the Jace pick. Or if they just change the bot lane. Whatever it is, something needs to change. There is not enough wave clear. And there's not enough pick potential. And frankly, the team fighting's bad. So like these are three clear errors. And I'm not saying that each team comp might not have an error. Like how much pick potential does Optic have? It pretty much relies on Thresh hitting a hook. Like, could it rely on Lee Sin doing something like really mechanically difficult and fancy? Sure, but it mainly just relies on Thresh getting a hook. There is no other pick potential. So they also lack pick potential, but at least they have team fighting and at least they have some wave clear. And their wave clear isn't particularly good, but it's more than Ezreal. And it's important that your wave clear is ranged. Like that's particularly important. So I think that the draft would have definitely given Clutch Gaming a lot better chance to win this game, and I'm kind of disappointed actually with how one-sided this game was. But that's fine. I'll be back tomorrow reviewing the Clutch Gaming Liquid game. So please stay tuned. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful night.